The next section, I'm going to talk about the landing of 4 Special Service Brigade. HR for the landing was set for 9:45 with the tide on the turn and rising, so that the obstacles would be visible, but there would be enough water for landing craft to beach. At 8:20, the guns of Roberts engaged from 10 miles. Erebus was having turret trouble, but she began to engage from 9:20 after sorting out her problems. Shooting wasn't very accurate because spotting planes were not flying, but by 9:27, 2 guns on Whiskey 15 had been destroyed. There was some panic in the German reporting. They reported 1 battleship, 2 cruisers, then 6 cruisers, and 90 landing ships. 3 beaches were designated: tar red for the armored breaching teams, white for 4-1 and 4-8 commandos, and green as the admin beach once opened, 4-7 commando to come ashore wherever it was feasible in the gap. The plan was for 4-1 and 4-8 commandos to land immediately after the 30 Armoured Brigade armoured breaching teams, which were landing on Red Beach with the first flight of 4-1 Commando. 4-1 Commando on the left and 4-8 Commando on the right. 4-7 was to remain afloat until called forward. 3 troops of 10 Inter-Allied Commando, Dutch, Belgian, and Norwegian, would land to take over West Capella and provide flank cover to 4-1 Commando. And here's the surface assault schedule for the operation. Apart from the LCIS of 4-1 Commando's first flight, the remainder of the units landed from LCT. After his experience on D-Day on Nan Red Beach, CO 4-8 Commando refused to put his men in LCIS. He was determined to come ashore behind armour. He later noted in his book on the Scheldt operation, somewhat cynically, that CO 4-1 Commando had not been on the landings on D-Day, so had no experience of being in a plywood landing craft under fire. The medium, heavy, and super heavy batteries of 9 Army Group Royal Artillery and the 2nd Canadian Army Group Royal Artillery, a total of 10 regiments of artillery, fired a time programme from the mainland around Breskens from H-70 to H+60. As most of the targets engaged were concrete bunkers and gun positions, little material damage could be expected. And it also appeared to have had little deterrent effect on the gunners of Whiskey 11 and Whiskey 13, although hits were made. Much of the barrage fell short, and even battery communications were uninterrupted. In the main, the greatest contribution to the operation was to the morale of the assault force. 4-1 Commando was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Eric Palmer. His plan was for B, P, and S troops to land 5 minutes behind the armoured assault teams of 30 Armour Brigade on Red Beach. The remainder of the commando would come ashore in LVT and Weasels on White Beach. However, because of the near miss from the LCTR barrage and the effective fire of the German batteries, they turned away twice, and as a result, they landed 27 minutes late. Second in command of 4-1 Commando told the commander of his craft to get back on track and land. So the first flight of 4-1 Commando landed at the same time as the first flight of 4-8 Commando. The troops disembarked quickly and moved to their planned positions. B Troop took up position on the dike, covering west. P Troop closed up to cover Whiskey 15 from the north. And S Troop set up their medium machine guns to cover the southern edge of the village. At 10:18, A Troop, HQ, X and Y troops landed in LVT at the edge of the gap. They were carried in a mixture of LVT and Weasels, from which the troops disembarked rapidly. The gap was under fire from Whiskey 17, and A Troop headed off quickly to clear the southern edge of the village. There was no resistance as A Troop cleared the southern edge of the village until they reached the area of the lighthouse at the end of the village. Here they came under fire from the tower. Using small arms and pier, they engaged the building. Once a tank engaged from the area of the dike, set the tower alight. The Germans were then happy to surrender. By 11:15, the village was largely clear, and only Whiskey 15 remained in enemy hands. Whiskey 15 comprised 4 3.7 British anti-aircraft guns and 2 3-inch guns, also British. The 3.7s were in concrete casemates and the others in open emplacements. It had been bombed and engaged by Roberts and Erebus, who between them had fired 26 15-inch rounds at it. It had also been hit by a broadside from a landing craft rocket. After a recce by the CO and OC Y Troop was ordered to assault. The assault went in from the landward side at 12 o'clock, with P Troop providing fast support. After 30 minutes, it was all over, and 120 prisoners had been taken. Then Y Troop, backed up by P Troop, exploited vigorously, reaching the lighthouse a mile beyond where they were told to go firm. I mentioned earlier that the brigade was supported by an armoured breaching team from 30 Armour Brigade. A Squadron, 1 Lothians, was an armoured support squadron comprising Sherman flails and command tanks. 87 Assault Squadron had AVRE with bridges and fascines, as well as armoured bulldozers. They were carried in 4 LCT named Bramble, Cherry, Apple and Damson. Each carried the same load of 3 flails, 2 AVRE and 1 armoured dozer. The original plan was for all 4 LCT to beach abreast on Red Beach, but it was found to be unsuitable. The wooden wave breakers and the angle of the slope and steel tank obstacles meant that they were ordered to beach in pairs on White Beach, which, considering the landing by 4-1 and 4-8 commandos, made the gap a busy and confused space, with LCT and armoured vehicles manoeuvring under fire. The LCT came into the beach in pairs. Damson came in and her AVRA bridge was hit, collapsing onto all the other vehicles. Burning, she was ordered to return to Ostend. The others fared little better in their efforts to land their vehicles. Those that got ashore bellied in the mud and were eventually drowned. Once the LCT had pulled away, out of 24 vehicles to be landed, only 2 command Shermans, 3 flails, 2 AVRE and 1 armoured dozer reached the village. This wasn't as bad a disaster as it might have been. Only the terrain to the north of the island was suitable for armour. At 12:05, Brigade TAC headquarters landed on the north side of the gap. Originally intending to land on the south, the fact that 4-1 had the village secure, the brigade commander changed his mind. The village, however, was not a healthy place, as from about 11 o'clock it had been under fire from Whiskey 17, and it remained so until a typhoon strike on the battery at 1300 hours, which caused it to go quiet for a while. Now turning to 4-8 Commando. The first flight of 4-8 Commando landed at the same time as 4-1 Commando and the armoured breaching teams on White Beach. The commando was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Jim Moulton. It was under strength at about 350 strong. The first flight of the commando, HQ, mortars, BX and Y troops, landed in LVT and Weasels at 10 past 10. As the LVT drove out of the LCT, they drenched the southern shoulder of the gap using 20mm guns on the LVT, and there was no return fire. The ground was badly broken, with obstacles and chunks of the dike in the gap, but all the vehicles got ashore. Mixed troop, commanded by Captain Mackenzie, took the lead, clearing the dunes overlooking Green Beach. Whiskey 154, the radar station, was found to be abandoned. Unsurprising, really, as between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, it received 11 15-inch rounds from Roberts. They then pushed on to secure the next strong point, which was Whiskey 285. Colonel Moulton, this was a significant step up from his experiences in Normandy. This was the way to land, dry shod, plenty of firepower, few casualties, and a wireless beside me. At 10:25, the second flight arrived, 2 LC2 of which were hit, probably by Whiskey 15 because Whiskey 13 had by that time run out of ammunition for its guns, though smaller calibers were still firing. One LCT ran aground on a stake blocking the best exit from the beach. The LVT offloaded, but was swamped. All of the S-Troop Vickers ammunition, 10,000 rounds, was lost, and both the guns. The 4-8 Commando chaplain, the Reverend Wood, swam ashore with his rucksack containing his field altar. Commando then reorganized in the vicinity of the radar station. In spite of many of their vehicles getting ashore, most have been destroyed by mines or bogged in craters. Meanwhile, the leading troop had forged on in the direction of Whiskey 13 in an effort to keep the momentum and the enemy off balance. Whiskey 13 was reached by 11:30. OCY troop, Major de Stackpole, launched a quick attack at 1300, but the assault was repulsed with many casualties, including all the section commanders, and Major de Stackpole was killed in the assault. The only option now was a deliberate attack. H hours planned for about 1600 hours, and Z Troop warned off for the assault. A Troop to provide covering fire, and X Troop to hold the ground gained. There were no comms back to brigade, and the FOB party had been killed, so the CO walked back to brigade headquarters to tee up the supporting fires for the assault. Whiskey 13 was a battery with 4 150mm guns in 4 casemates and 2 75mm guns protected by wire, flamethrowers, a mix of LMGs, and 20mm guns. Artillery support was arranged from 2nd Canadian AGRA, and a typhoon strike organised. Fast support from the tanks couldn't be arranged as an angle couldn't be opened up because of the state of the village. When Moulton returned, he found that the Z Troop O group had been caught by a mortar concentration and all the commanders killed or wounded. OCX Troop was also mortally wounded. The MO, medical officer, and the FOB party all dead or missing. Moulton then ordered B Troop to replace Z for the attack. Z Troop pushed up as close as it dared in preparation, but they were well inside the safe splinter distance of the bombs. The typhoon strike was delivered at about 1600 hours, and 4-8 assaulted under smoke from its own 2-inch mortars. Lone sand had made the mines easy to spot, but it clogged up weapons. At one stage, Lieutenant Albert Thompson's submachine gun had a stoppage as he faced a German, and he threw it at the German, but Sergeant Stringer, following up, shot the German dead. The command post and the gun emplacements were all captured, and pushing on they were stopped by a 20mm gun firing from the end of the battery. It was now dark, and the CO decided to go firm on the battery and deal with the 100 or so prisoners taken. Patrols around the battery pulled in more prisoners overnight. The assault by 4-8 had been successful, but 6 officers and 6 other ranks killed, and 3 officers wounded and another 54 wounded. At 6:30 on D+1, Captain Flunder and A Troop pushed on towards Zoutelander. The 20mm gun was abandoned. A few determined Germans were dealt with on the way, and Zoutelander and the nearest bunkers beyond were secured.